because you were never supposed to. It was labeled AR 1991 Alpha. Not a wedding certificate, not a photo album, a protocol.
Yep.
Written in cold bureaucratic language, signed in Geneva, and sealed for 30 years in a steel vault beneath the Obama Foundation. And what did it say? Subject Michelle M. Robinson, codename Equity Echo, approved for public deployment. Primary objective aligned with Barack H. Obama for narrative development and identity anchoring by Q4 2004. Now tell me, does that sound like the beginning of a love story? Or the opening act of a carefully programmed campaign? You were told they were the model couple. You watched them dance, kiss, laugh, wave. You were shown 8 years of symbolism, but no one told you about the vault. No one told you this power couple was quite literally a power couple, assembled, rehearsed, and released by something called the Artemis Circle, an international consortium specializing in programmable social influence assets. Sound ridiculous? Sure, until you see the documents, until the voice print that unlocks the file matches Michelle's voice, until she watches herself sign the bottom of the page. And that's where we begin. The steel hiss of a vacuum-sealed door echoes through a space no journalist has ever entered. The Foundation Vault doesn't have windows. It has pressure sensors. It doesn't have furniture. It has biometric locks. It doesn't echo with applause. It hums with evidence. 3 people stand in its sterile heart. 1 man holding a clearance badge that wasn't supposed to exist, Kash Patel, and 2 others who know exactly what he's about to open. Michelle's arms are folded, posture tight, eyes fixed on the curved LED wall as it finishes decrypting a file last touched in 1991. Barack stands with hands behind his back, a politician's stance, but his eyes flick too often too quick. That calm, DNC smooth mask has tension in the jaw now. He doesn't like not being the one with the narrative. And on the wall, the words materialize. Project Artemis Alpha. Deployment Directive. Michelle M. Robinson. Geneva Another Initiative, 1991. No one speaks. Then the screen shifts. A scan of an old document appears watermarked, double authenticated. Michelle's signature at the bottom, dated August 12, 1991. Barack exhales through his nose. This is fabricated. You know that, right? There are 1,000 ways to fake a government document. Kash doesn't answer. He taps the console. A playback file loads. A man's voice, European educated, sharp cuts through the air. Subject to be placed in high visibility public alignment with Barack H. Obama by fiscal Q4 2004. Emotional amplification protocol to begin during law school co-engagement phase. Rehearsal segments to follow. Michelle steps forward. Who authorized you to open this? Kash glances sideways. You did. He gestures to the audio log window blinking red. File required primary voice print 4 unlock. Your voice. 5 syllables. Why are we doing this? Exactly as you said it during a podcast taping in 2021. Guess the system still thinks you're part of the team. Barack moves between her and the screen. This is a vault for Foundation archives. Not conspiracies. Not this. Kash doesn't flinch. And yet, here we are. The screen zooms in on the final clause of the contract. The words are clinical, emotionless, brutal, asset to engage in full media integration with partner. Affection modulation allowed within controlled thresholds. Strategic dissolution scenarios to be developed only if narrative collapse becomes statistically probable. Michelle's jaw tightens, and for a moment there's no spin, no smile, no slogan, just a woman staring at the version of herself written 30 years ago by someone else. Welcome to the Foundation Vault. Welcome to the story they never rehearsed. Under the cold wash of vault lighting, the screen flickered once, then bloomed into color. No countdown, no warning. Just Michelle and Barack seated close but not touching. 2 smiles, both too still to be sincere. He leaned in with a half embrace, robotic in motion. She tilted her head. Then came the line. It's my husband, y'all. The playback paused mid-frame. Michelle's mouth was still open from the tail of the line. The room held its breath. Let me guess, said Kash, arms crossed. Spontaneous affection caught on tape, Michelle's chin lifted. It was authentic. That's what love looks like after 30 years. Interesting. Kash reached for the panel. Because I have a different cut. The screen resumed. But this time voices bled through headset chatter from a control booth. Okay, Michelle, that was flat. Say it again, but this time with more warmth. A beat. The scene rewinds. Michelle resets her posture. It's my husband, y'all. Still stiff. Let's add a beat before the laugh. Barack tries smiling wider. No teeth. Barack shifted uncomfortably. This was never meant to be released. It was rehearsal footage. Cash's eyes narrowed. Exactly, rehearsal footage. Because everything is a performance with you two. Michelle's voice turned sharp. We did what every public couple does. We prepared. That's not criminal. You didn't prepare. Cash shot back. You produced, directed, scripted. We were under pressure. The kind of pressure that requires 10 takes to say the word husband. Barack's tone turned defensive. You're playing games. This proves nothing about us. You're dragging our family through this for what some political theater. Cash stepped forward. Your family is the theater. You want to talk about political damage? Let's talk about the metadata on that file. Time-stamped edits. Color correction on Michelle's face to soften the brow line. Cue cards in the mirror behind the camera. Michelle's voice dropped to a growl. You're dissecting intimacy like it's a campaign ad. You treated it like one first. Barack cut in louder now. Enough. You want to make this about authenticity? Fine. You think 8 years in the White House didn't break us. You think being dissected by every camera, every network didn't push us to adapt. Cash didn't blink. Adaptation is survival. Fabrication is fraud. Michelle laughed dryly. Says the man who works for a political... And yet Cash leaned forward. I never had to rehearse my wedding vows. The silence slammed down like a door. Michelle clenched her jaw. We never faked anything. People fall in love differently. We fought. We stayed. That's what matters. Cash nodded slowly. Then explained the deleted segment from this recording, the one where you said, and I quote, "There were years I didn't even like him." Michelle flinched. Oh, you forgot that line. Must have been the version that didn't make it past the PR filter. Barack's voice was quieter now, but bitter. We didn't ask for this level of scrutiny. You built your legacy on being watched, Cash replied. Now you're upset someone rewound the tape. Michelle's control cracked. You want to make this ugly fine. I didn't marry a saint. I married a ball the system loved more than me, Lemma. I married a man they groomed. And I stayed. You think that makes me weak? It makes me the only damn thing holding this illusion together. Cash took a breath. You just admitted it's an illusion. Barack turned toward Michelle. Stop talking. But Michelle's eyes were locked on the screen, frozen again on that still frame. That smile so famously warm, now dissected like an autopsy photo. It's my husband, y'all. Cash's voice lowered. Was he ever? Barack stepped forward, low and firm. You've had your fun, Patel. But if you think America's going to care about an old clip, you're more deluded than I thought. They won't care about a clip, Cash said. They'll care that you sold them a lie and called it hope. The screen blinked. Another file loaded behind the first. Its title read simply, Narrative Control, Phase 2. No one moved. Michelle's fists clenched. You're not going to take us down with some dusty footage and bitter commentary. Cash didn't smile. I don't need to take you down, I just need to press play. And he did. The screen jumped to life again. This time no stage, no sound check, no husband, y'all. Just a door opening, a camera meant for B-roll quietly rolling. Michelle entered the room first, confident, heeled boots clicking sharp against the floor. Barack was seated scrolling a tablet. He looked up, not startled, not pleased, just interrupted. Oh, he said, adjusting his collar. I didn't expect you here. He didn't stand, didn't lean in, didn't move to touch her. Just placed the tablet face down like a man about to discuss logistics with a colleague, not greet his wife of 30 years. Michelle stood stiff. You done spying on our marriage, yet Cash didn't take his eyes off the screen. I'm just watching what you filmed, or forgot you filmed, she crossed her arms. We're not one of those couples who live online. We don't post date nights for strangers. That's a crime now. You don't need Instagram to look in love, Cash said. You just need a pulse. Barack scoffed. You're now measuring marriages by body language. Cash tapped the tablet. The video froze. A pulse line appeared on the side panel. Heart rate readings biometric overlays embedded in the security feed. Barack's didn't spike. Michelle's barely registered. This file logs heart rates by proximity. Standard vault recording protocol. Want to know what it says? Yours didn't change when she walked in, Michelle snapped. That's insane. Are you really sitting here reading our marriage through a Fitbit graph? No, Cash said. I'm reading it through the absence of response, through 30 years of pretending to act surprised. Barack stood now, voice colder. You don't know what it's like to carry the entire image of a presidency on your back. Michelle stepped forward. You think what that love is a performance, that we owe you fireworks every time we share a room? Cash raised an eyebrow. Think when a couple rehearses their reunion more than their vows, something's off. Barack tried to laugh, but it came out thin. You want a public display? What you want me to dip her and kiss for like is 2008. Michelle snapped. We're 60. We're tired. We built a legacy. You want passion? Go turn on The Bachelor. You built a brand, Cash said. A very polished, very lucrative brand, but not a legacy. Legacies don't come with lighting crews. Michelle's voice cracked just a touch. You don't get to define love for us. You don't get to dig through our files and call yourself a prophet. You uploaded your marriage, Cash said. All I did was press play. Barack stepped between them. What are you trying to prove, that we're human, that we don't cuddle on cue? Congratulations. You cracked the Obamas, Michelle sneered. Next thing he'll be asking for footage of our wedding night. Cash looked unamused. Don't tempt the vault. You might be surprised what it kept. Michelle's lip curled. You are disgusting. No, Cash said unflinching. What's disgusting is spending 3 decades selling America the idea that perfection was possible, and now acting offended when someone wants a refund. Barack's eyes narrowed. You're exploiting this for headlines. Funny, Cash answered. I thought that's what the 10-camera shoot was for. Michelle's voice dropped into a hiss. This is violation. This is you invading our most private spaces, Cash gestured toward the screen. This is a corporate shoot. 3 angles, a lighting grid, a reverb mic. Your private life has catering. Michelle turned away, muttering, no one even recognizes me anymore. Cash didn't miss a beat. That's because the production ended. The cameras stopped. And when there's no lens, there's no Michelle. Just a woman in a cap at the airport wondering why no one claps. Barack stepped closer, low and sharp. You're playing with fire. I'm holding a mirror, Cash said. You don't like the reflection. Don't blame me. Michelle clenched her fists. We sacrificed everything. We gave people hope. That's more than you'll ever understand. You didn't give them hope, Cash said. You sold it, syndicated it, turned it into a franchise. You trademarked inspiration and then got pissed when someone wanted to check the receipts. The screen dimmed. A new clip cued silently in the background. Michelle didn't look up. Barack's jaw tightened. Cash glanced down at the timestamp. This next one's from 2012, internal recording. No edits. You both forgot it existed. But the vault didn't. He reached for the control panel. And I promise you it gets colder from here. The vault lit up again, and this time it didn't start with deception. It started with something far more dangerous. Sincerity. Barack's voice echoed through the chamber, smooth and composed. Every man needs a gay friend to learn empathy. On the screen, Barack in a softly lit studio leaning into the mic, fingers folded in rehearsed contemplation. Michelle smiled beside him. The backdrop was cozy, relatable. A podcast staged to look like a living room. Cash didn't blink. That line tested well. You know that, right? Barack looked sideways. We said that to reach people. You said that, Cash replied, because your PR firm told you empathy polls well in the swing states with high college enrollment. Michelle bristled. You're twisting it. Cash didn't look away. Am I? He tapped the console. A file labeled DIG, Social Harmony Simulation. Geneva Lodge 91 projected into the air. Scanned documents rolled past in cold blue. Barack's brow tensed. Let me read you a section, Cash said. Initiate early exposure of masculine political figures to LGBTQ positive framing. Primary objective, normalize empathy via emotional crossover anchoring. Test phrase, recommendation, gay friend empathy, bridge. Barack's voice dropped. You're trying to weaponize compassion. No, Cash replied. You did, 30 years ago, in a boardroom. Michelle shot forward. We did that segment to speak to kids, to make them feel seen, Funny Cash said. Because I found another file. PR brief from 2008. Internal memo. Wanna hear it without waiting, he played it. A clipped voice, crisp and DC trained, rolled through the vault. Let's float the gay friend quote in key swing states. Empathy holds well among suburban white moms, especially post-Oprah. Tie it to masculinity. Use Michelle as anchor. Test on late-night formats. The file stopped. Barack didn't speak. Michelle's jaw locked. So what you're telling me, connection is fake? That intention doesn't matter. I'm telling you. Cash said that when your campaign scheduled sincerity 6 months in advance, it stops being sincerity. Michelle's voice cracked with heat. At least we tried. We built bridges. We made space for voices no one cared about before. You made space, Cash answered between the camera and the cue cards. You built empathy into a market segment. Barack's tone darkened. You really think this is some kind of revelation that people didn't know we were strategic? No, Cash said. But they didn't know you were synthetic. Michelle stepped in front of Barack, now fire in her voice. We carried a movement. We gave kids someone to look up to. What have you done besides tear things down? I unzipped the file drawer, Cash said. And I let the country see what you kept at the bottom. Barack's fingers tapped the edge of the control table. You're making enemies you can't walk away from. Cash's gaze didn't shift. You made idols you can't live up to. Michelle pointed at the screen. That clip saved lives. And that clip, Cash replied, was drafted during your PR firm's Tuesday morning agenda under emotional resonance activation. Section 3, right above your Birkenstock brand deal. Barack's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. You think being clever makes you right. I think being recorded makes you real. Silence. Michelle exhaled hard. You know what, fine? Yes, we crafted a message. Yes, we said what needed to be said in ways people could hear it. That's politics. No, Cash said, stepping closer. That's manipulation dressed as virtue, and the second people stopped clapping, you call them backwards. Barack finally spoke, voice even. Empathy matters. Maybe you should try it. Cash stared him down. Empathy isn't something you inject into people with a catchphrase and a demographic sheet. It's something you earn when you tell the truth. All of it. Michelle turned away, muttering under her breath. Cash caught it. What was that? I said. It still worked. The line still worked. They believed it. Cash nodded slowly. That's what scares me most. He turned back to the console. Let's see what else you rehearsed. And the vault opened again. The vault dimmed for a breath, then flared again. This time it wasn't Barack's voice that filled the chamber. It was Michelle's, not the polished public Michelle. Not the first lady with a book deal and a Netflix docuseries. No, this was raw, unscripted, too honest for its own good. On screen, she sat in a studio, arms folded, voice heavy. I walked past people. No one recognizes me. I could wear a hat, sneakers, walk right past someone, and they wouldn't look up. I'm just a black woman in a cap. The video froze. Michelle didn't blink. She didn't need to. The words were already hanging in the air, sour and needy. Cash turned to her. So that's the problem. No one stops to worship, Michelle snapped. That's not what I said. Cash stepped forward. But it's exactly what you meant. Barack moved instinctively, shoulders squaring between them. She gave this country everything. She lived in a cage of cameras. She smiled for people who called her names behind closed doors. Cash nodded. Yes. And now she's furious the spotlight moved on. That's not service. That's addiction. Michelle's voice cracked with venom. You think I wanted the attention? You think I begged for the flashing lights, the cover shoots, the fake smiles? You didn't beg, Cash said. You branded. You turned victimhood into capital. You copyrighted struggle. And now that it's not selling, you're bitter. Michelle's fists clenched. You don't know what it's like to carry expectation. I do, Cash said. You just carried it into your podcast, your press tour, your memoir. Every episode, you trashed the man next to you and wondered why people stopped clapping. Barack's tone was iron. Watch your mouth. Cash's eyes flicked toward the screen. Gladly, he tapped a control. A new image projected faded analog archival. A government form. Geneva 1991. Michelle M. Robinson. Subject A1. Emotional amplification role codename Equity. Echo status deployed. Active, Michelle inhaled sharply. The past looked her dead in the face. I was 27, she muttered. And already an asset, Cash replied. Your assignment, connect emotion to agenda. Build trust project suffering, and never let them see the switchboard behind the curtain. Michelle shook her head. That was theoretical. A draft. No, Cash said. It was a design, and you followed it line for line. She scoffed. So now I'm some kind of, what psychological Trojan horse? Cash raised an eyebrow. You said it, not me. Michelle turned to Barack. Are you going to let him call me that? Barack didn't answer. Michelle's voice rose wild and cracking. They loved me. I was the one they listened to, the one who made them cry. Me. And now Cash said they don't look, and it's killing you. Michelle slammed her hand on the console. You're a nobody. You're a functionary with a badge and a grudge. Cash didn't move. And you're a ghost with a camera crew. She pointed at the screen, voice breaking. That file is nothing. I was never anyone's project. I became who I am. And yet Cash said you can't name a moment that wasn't mic'd and long. Barack finally spoke, voice low but edged. You don't get to erase her story because you don't like the authorship. I'm not erasing it, Cash said. I'm just pointing out the footnotes and the part where she stopped writing and started repeating the script. Michelle's gaze was glass and fire. You have no idea what it cost to be me. Cash stared at her. No, but I know exactly what it paid. The room fell silent. The screen faded to black. Then a line of text emerged, slow blinking. Attention threshold. Critical, subject deviation detected. Michelle turned away, but her reflection lingered in the dead screen. No makeup, no lighting, no production. Just the outline of a woman who used to command stadiums, now watching herself vanish in real time. Cash looked down. And they call me the Predator. The vault came alive again, not with thunder, but with something colder, sharper, mockery. Michelle's voice played through the speakers, lifted from a previous podcast episode, echoing back with full force. How come my brother has a deeper voice than Barack? The line landed like a slap, not on the ears, but on the spine. Even Barack's posture tightened. Cash didn't laugh. He didn't need to. He just let the silence work. Barack adjusted his cuff eyes, trained on the screen, jaw locked. I don't need to roar to prove I'm a man. Cash tilted his head. No, you needed to be quiet, calculated, controlled. That's why you were selected. Barack shot him a glare. Selected Cash tapped the console. The screen flipped, then settled on a PDF. Stamped RKP Strategies. Confidential. April 2004. A bulleted list began to scroll. Barack Obama. High likability index. Neutral cadence measured tone. Non-threatening masculine aesthetic. Avoids tribal language. Avoids confrontation. Lacks sharp ideological branding. Ideal for cross-demographic rollout. Michelle didn't say a word. Cash didn't look at her. You weren't the alpha, Barack. You were the buffer. Barack's face twitched. I ran for Senate. I earned every vote. You were coached. Cash fired back. Tripped, softened. Every edge rounded off by a committee afraid of its own shadow. Barack's voice dipped into icy calm. I won because I connected. No, Cash said. You won because America was starving for a black candidate who wouldn't scare the suburbs. Michelle flinched. Barack stepped forward. You think you're saying something brave? I'm saying something true. Barack raised his voice now, just a notch. So what I passed the filter, I played the game too well. And that makes me fake. Cash's tone never lifted. It makes you a product. Michelle snapped. He was the hope of a generation. And hope, Cash replied, was optimized for retail. Barack leaned into the console. I gave people something to believe in. Cash looked at him, then nodded toward the line on the screen. Avoid displays of dominant energy. Leverage empathy. Emphasize listening over leading. You gave them what your handlers told you they wanted, Cash said. You were the mannequin in the storefront window. Neatly dressed, soft-spoken, non-threatening to white liberals and perfectly tolerable to Wall Street. Barack's hands tightened into fists. I'm not going to stand here while you strip me down to an index card. You already are one, Cash replied. You just didn't read the fine print. Michelle's voice cut in low but sharp. You couldn't handle a day in his shoes. Cash didn't turn. I wouldn't wear shoes tailored by a polling firm. Barack's face flushed, the cool mask slipping. You came here to humiliate us. I came here to declassify what you classified as authenticity. The screen shifted again. A still frame Barack from 2006 mid-speech leaning into a crowd. Subtitles below. This is your moment. This is our time. Cash stared at the image. They gave you that line too. Barack's voice cracked, barely audible. You don't know what it took to carry that weight. I do, Cash said, because I've carried the truth, and it's heavier than any script. Michelle stepped back, voice hollow. They loved him for being calm. And now Cash answered. They're waking up to realize calm was just code for silence. Barack looked down. Cash delivered the final line like a verdict. You weren't elected because you were the strongest man in the room. You were elected because you were the safest. The screen went dark again, and this time no one had anything left to say. The vault hummed. Not a soft purr, no. This was mechanical metallic. A low grinding resonance that vibrated up through the floor like something ancient was waking up. The screen in front of them flashed crimson, then pale white. Voice print confirmation. Subject M.M. Robinson. Match 99. 998%. A final lock disengaged with a sharp click. A document unspooled across the screen, line by line in perfect digital clarity. There was no glitch, no distortion. Just text crisp, bureaucratic damning. Project Artemis, Alpha. Deployment contract. Classified odds. You cite subject Michelle M. Robinson. Assignment, long-term alignment with Barack H. Obama for purposes of narrative development and public cohesion. Emotional anchor role. Subtype A1. Initial PR grooming phase to begin Q1 1992. Alignment window 10 years minimum. Silence stretch too long. Then Michelle erupted. This is fake. This is fake, and you know it. The screen didn't flinch. It didn't argue. It just presented the truth like a guillotine, clinical, precise, inevitable. Barack stepped in front of her. Enough. You've made your point. Cash's voice was level. But something in his tone could slice granite. No, not yet. He moved to the edge of the console and zoomed in on the top right corner of the document. The signature block filled the screen. 3 names, 2 unrecognizable. The third clear, legible, indisputable. Nathaniel M. Clark, Senior Strategic Advisor, Office of the President, 2009-2011. Michelle stared. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Cash kept going. That's not some Swiss bureaucrat. That's the same man who scripted your husband's 2008 DNC acceptance speech. You remember that one, we are not red states or blue states? Barack clenched his fists. This is insanity. That man's been dead for 6 years, and the file's been buried for 30. Cash answered. Right under your feet. Michelle shook her head like the words might fall off. It's not real. We never agreed to this. We were in love. Cash tapped the screen. A second page loaded. Subject A1 to undergo scheduled narrative sync with Subject B. Public-facing relationship to include educational credentials overlap. Controlled interpersonal tension resolved through shared cultural mission. Barack's voice dropped to a whisper. Michelle, but she was beyond hearing. Her eyes locked on her own name, her own signature, the unmistakable handwriting on the dotted line. You think this proves something? Her voice cracked. I built this life. I survived everything they threw at us. You didn't survive it, Cash said. You were programmed to endure it and marketed to inspire others to imitate it. Barack turned to the wall, unable to face it any longer. You don't understand what it takes to be us. I understand exactly what it takes to lie for that long. Cash replied, it takes a contract. Michelle staggered back a step. This isn't happening. This is some kind of set-up, deep-fake Russian clone file, whatever. Cash leaned in, voice like steel. Then explain why the file opened with your voice. Silence. Not even a hum from the vault. Just the weight of something undeniable pressing against them like gravity. Cash turned to Barack. You were the face, but she was the design. Michelle looked at the screen one last time, then swung her hand hard at the console. It didn't budge. Reality doesn't crash. It just plays louder. And behind them, the wall lit up again. 3 words pulsing across the screen. Deployment complete. Archive breached. There was no more room for lies. Only playback. The vault dimmed like a stage losing power. No alarms, no dramatics, just one line blinking quietly on the center screen, white on black, project terminated May 2024. No explanations, no press release, no commemorative photo of the Obamas hand in hand beneath a hopeful slogan. Just silence. The kind that doesn't invite reflection, but demands it. Michelle was the first to move. No grand speech, no fire. Just footsteps echoing off polished steel as she walked out alone, without a word, shoulders stiff beneath the weight of a life rewritten in real time. Barack stayed behind. He stood before the console, eyes fixed on a file that hadn't yet been opened. Its label was simple: Phase 3, succession planning. He didn't touch it. He didn't need to. For the first time in his life, he seemed unsure of the script. Cash said nothing. He reached forward and pressed the shutdown key. The vault exhaled as if it too was done lying. The screen went dark. The air was still. The war for now was quiet, but the damage had been done. Not with explosions, not with tweets or press leaks, but with receipts. With the kind of truth that doesn't shout, because it doesn't have to. And you know what? That's what made it lethal. Because what we just witnessed wasn't just the collapse of a myth. It was the quiet demolition of a franchise once sold to the American people with tears, hugs, Netflix specials, and 100 stage photo ops. They promised us a love story. What we got was a contract. They promised us authenticity. What we got was an algorithm. And as the vault sealed behind them, leaving only dust and declassified deception, one fact became unmistakably clear. This wasn't a marriage, a current. It was a marketing campaign. So here's the question, America. If the most celebrated couple of our time was scripted, what other movements were storyboarded in conference rooms? What truths were tested in focus groups before being handed to you as gospel? What other vaults are still locked, hiding the programming behind the performance? Because this fight isn't just about the Obamas. It never was. It's about a system polished, profitable, protected, designed to make you feel rather than think. To sell you representation while robbing you of reality. To hand you actors and call them leaders. But here's the good news. You just watch the mask slip. And once it slips, it never fits the same again. So remember this moment, not because a first lady walked off stage, but because the script burned in front of your eyes. Most marriages end in silence. This one began in a conference room and ended in a vault. Now it's your move, America, because the vault may be sealed, but the truth's just getting warmed up.